somebody, we work with people throughout our lives. I just want to know, hey, register for this.
So there's a registration list for all the attendees of the IETF.
But that's what I mean. How do I access that?
So if you go to the agenda, and then there's an attendee list. You click on that, it'll list all the attendees for each meeting. It lists all the attendees and their affiliations.
Okay, like in ITU, there's like for the entire ITU study group 13.
You find out who attended.
It's all. I was just wondering if there's a central repository for all attendees. There is.
Well,
I have to go like the individual.
you have to go to individual meetings as far as who attends the meetings.
Yeah, no, I was just wondering if because you have people registered, that maybe there's a central register list.
Yeah, it's just our attendee list for each meeting. Yeah.
I think it's fine to like go to the mic when you want to say. It's also like if somebody's speaking, somebody else gets up.
Karen, do you want them here?
But we were just discussing. I think what we're going to do is we're just going to sit them here.
Well, if you can make this thing not be on because it is.
Yeah, that is really, that's very bright.
Because we can put another chair and just put them here. 1, 2, 3 if you want.
We could do that.
It's up to you.
It's sort of tight, but
It is.
there's a lot of cake.
It'll work. I mean, we don't need that close in front of us. Right?
Well, that's true. But you need to move, and then I need somebody to do slides.
Well, so you can do your own slides
I think we decided we're going to do this
with
one.
the clicker, and I'll be standing by in case that little snafu happens that we've had a couple times already.
All right, so I can stand and I can sit. I'll stand for now.
No.
No, I'll be fine.
Not a problem to put like a couple of chairs here.
No, we're going to put one more, and the three of you will be right here.
Sit. There's a space here for chairs.
Yeah, this will be just fine.
Okay.
To be honest, I've been.
It's your show.
Well, no, it's not much.
Hey, Lisha. Is Lisha number 3?
This is number 3.
You want to be in the middle or you want to be at the end?
Let me just make some magic happen. You got your luggage.
I did get
I recognize the shirt.
Yeah. I've seen the shirt before.
Say hi. I know you're busy right now. I'll catch you. Sorry about yesterday. And yeah. But maybe after this we can. When does it end?
Yeah, 4th of September. Scandinavian.
Okay, so sport. But
Which
I now know how
area?
you. Or we'll do like at the reception or somewhere else.
I do performance measurements.
Okay.
Network latency and
Okay.
stuff like that.
Me too. Yeah. Great. Thank you.
How about you? Which area are you in?
Ours is that up and down computer tabs.
Okay.
Yeah, where it got started.
Yeah.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
These
I
days
see.
I'm working on security.
Okay, yeah. So I'm definitely the least experienced of the experienced ITFers on our panel, I think.
You've been here before.
I've been there before, I have, yeah. I actually wore a shirt from my first ITF in London 2.5 years ago.
Oh, I see. Yeah, I remember that t-shirt.
That was nice because no offense, but the new ones that have plastic stuff. This one too. It's like all of this doesn't really breathe very well. You have these big things, and this is a different way to paint it. Yeah.
So the little problem with computer right now is somebody tries to share slides and it only stops being able to advance slides.
Okay.
So hopefully that doesn't happen. It didn't happen in the last session. Meetup knows about it. They're working on it.
So how we're doing is we're saying like a few words each and then questions or.
Yes, I'll ask each of you something that's divided into 3 sections. Your personal story, why you got to the conversation. Several questions and discuss.
Yeah.
All right, are we ready to go? They have to scan it every time.
Oh, I have to. Should I do it? Should I scan it?
Okay, I think we're going to get started. All right. So this is the last session of the day. It is a panel. This is not quite the perfect setup for the panel, but that's okay. What we're going to do is we're going to put the three panelists seated down here, and I'll stand here and ask questions and stuff. But one of the things I want to start this session with is I'd really like to encourage you all to ask questions. I have a long list of questions, but this is really about what you all are interested in and what questions you have for long-term, for participants of the IETF, long-term and some a little less long-term. So with that, we will start with the, Michelle asked me to remind you to everybody please scan the code again. And by the end of today, you will all be perfect at scanning your code for every meeting you attend. So we'll take a pause, everybody scans. Michelle, have you been using the queue tool for people to ask questions? Okay, so please join the queue in order to ask any questions. All right, I see phones up. I think everybody has probably accomplished that part. So the next thing, is the IETF Note Well. You've heard about this a number of times today. As a reminder, this is an official IETF session. These are the policies and procedures of the IETF. You have agreed to these when you registered, and these are the rules by which we operate. If you have any questions, feel free to ask any of the leadership about these sets of rules. So we'll start with introducing myself. I am Karen O'Donoghue. I've been attending the IETF for a number of years. I've been a working group chair. I've done the NOC team, so if you have any issues with the network, I'm happy to direct you in that direction. And also I've been engaged in various education outreach activities over the years. My primary technical focus at this point in time is network time synchronization and security, and I chair the Network Time Protocol Working Group and the JSON signing and encryption working groups. We have a slide for each of the three participants. So what I'd like to do is to start with the three of you and have each of you introduce yourself and tell us what originally brought you to the IETF and did you accomplish what originally brought you to the IETF. And so, Leisha, I don't know if we could start with you.
Oh, I thought that last name started with Z.
You apparently managed to get the honor of the first slide, so.
Thank you for the honor. How I got started? Oh, by accident. Because when I started working on networking, it wasn't IETF yet. So it's all by chance. I was actually started, as you can tell, I came from China. I went to Cal State LA for my master degree. Then I bumped into this book called The Computer Networks. This was back in 1980, the very, very first book on networking. I picked it up, I decided this is what I'm gonna do for the rest of my life, that's it. So the rest is really history, as people say. I just happened to be at the right time, went to the right place. So after I made that goal, I was fortunate. I went to MIT working for David Clark. He used to come to this IETF meetings, and he had the title at the time, Internet Architect. And he and another person, I think the Barry Lanner, started this whole process of setting up a community. And IETF was one of the many task forces they created. So as a student of David Clark, I got involved in this from the very beginning. Shall I go to the next one? Oh, I need to answer. Yeah.
So the next participant is Lars. You want to introduce yourself and say why you originally came?
Hi, Lars Eckert. Day job wise, I work for Mozilla. All the stuff in the browser that touch the network are the things I care about. So if you have any questions about that, we can talk later and during the week about Firefox and other stuff. So I came to the IETF similarly to Leisha, although a little bit later. So I got my PhD from ISI in Los Angeles, which is like one of the original nodes. If you see these really old DARPA maps, that ISI is one. And there was a division called Div 7, which was the networking division. And I was a student there. And basically, the deal was, if you were a student there, you went to the IETF because everybody went to the IETF, like the entire floor. And so it was, I mean, there's literally like 40 ISI people at every IETF. And so that's how I got started. And originally, I started working on TCP, and a little bit later on IPsec and virtual private networks, which were just like tunnels, but we called them VPNs at the time. And then when I graduated, I sort of decided I wanted to sort of stay close to academia, and maybe also close to sort of standards work. And sort of I found jobs that let me sort of, where having been involved in the IETF was seen as a feature. And so I found employers that let me continue to do this for like 25 years now. This is actually my 25th anniversary. Not quite this meeting, but this year. And so you never really, if you come for that long, you don't come for one thing, and you more often don't achieve what you come here for, but you achieve maybe other things as a side effect, or you help other people achieve things for the internet, which is equally good. So I don't know if we achieved what we set out to achieve, but I think we sort of helped the internet get quite a bit better over time.
Okay, so Bjorn is a relative new participant.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's my 25 months anniversary this year. The IETF. Hello, my name is Bjorn. I'm head of research at a small startup called Domos, and that's also the reason why I started going to the IETF. Domos does network quality monitoring, and we started attending the Broadband Forum, which is a different standards organization. And I was at one of those meetings, and I noticed that, oh, the IETF is meeting in the same city in London the week after. So I was like, oh, I should go check that out. And I went there and met a lot of people who work on very interesting things, and saw that the IETF is an opportunity to get your work known and to get input. If you're working on something that requires collaboration between a lot of different companies or different people, like people working on different parts of the network or different parts of the networking stack, then the IETF is the place to go to get that feedback and get that collaboration going. So yeah, that's why I'm still here.
Okay. So sort of still focusing on your personal stories associated with the IETF, I was curious if you all had examples of, your favorite personal success story, something that you're proud of in your IETF career, or something that was a significant problem that you encountered. I imagine, Bjorn, you might have fewer of these, but maybe we'll start with Lars this time.
Sure. So the positive things, I've done a bunch of stuff, but one of the things I've done is chairing the Quick Working Group in the IETF when Google brought that to the community, and we decided to take it on. And Mark Nottingham and I were chairing it because we realized we needed one networking person, which is me, and one HTTP person, which is Mark. And that working group was super intense and delivered like a excellent protocol that is really like used worldwide now. It runs 30% of the traffic on the internet, and it also brought a whole bunch of new young engineers to the IETF that otherwise wouldn't have come. Many of them are now working group chairs or on the ISG or on the IAB, because it's been like 6, 7, 8, 10 years since we first started doing Quick. But that was really one of the sort of most fun experiences I've had down in the trenches on technology. In terms of the things I enjoyed least, I don't know. The good thing is that the IETF as an organization has really changed a lot. I remember when I came as a student in the 90s. So at ISI, this is not something that's only in the IETF, but at ISI and academia, right? In the 90s, at least in the US where I was, it was sort of considered, a game or a challenge. Like if somebody gives a talk, you want to ask them the nastiest question in the nicest possible way, just to show that you're intellectually superior, right? And sort of as a student, you absorb this and then you play it back and because the same people from ISI and from other universities came to the IETF, that culture was very much part of the IETF, right? That people were very, let's say, frank, sometimes insultingly so. And as a student, it's really hard to reflect. And then thankfully, we've sort of, as a society worldwide, moved away from that. And also the IETF is moving away from that, which makes it a much more approachable place. And we've left that behind. But sort of the moments I least enjoy probably have something to do with these sort of tense discussions that didn't really need to be that tense. If we could have taken the sort of personality and ego aspect out of them and made it about technology, that would have been better.
Bjorn?
Yeah, it's a difficult question to ask, or to answer, I think, because I have submitted one internet draft for review in the IPPM group and working on that. So I can't really say like I champion this technology that's now deployed on the internet. But yeah, I'm proud of the work that we've been doing there, and I think sort of a positive experience or positive thing that I've taken away from the ITF is like just the people you meet here. That is from the actually the first meeting. It's been really cool to because you meet people from all around the world who are working on things that are similar to what you're already working on, and it's a great way to build relationships with people who have very different perspectives, different experience, and you learn a lot from that. So I think, yeah, that's probably the main thing for me.
Alicia?
Since I've been here many years, lots of stories to tell. I'm trying to figure out one that has to be unique. So here's one. I think it was in the 90s. Again, we have meetings every year. So there's one time, a few people went to dinner. I remember two very clearly, as Bob Hendon, who and me, we were both at the first IETF, and also Christian Huitema. Many people probably know the name. Also, he chaired IAB for some years. So at the dinner talk, we were talking about what are the hardest problems for the internet. And we recalled on day one, the three of them: routing, scalability, congestion control, and security. By the 90s, TCP slow start congestion control was well established. So we cannot say we killed congestion control problem. I know people are still working on that, but its problem is under control. At the 90s, I think the routing scalability was still kind of a question mark, because I even chaired the co-chaired the routing research group in the early 2000-ish. Then the security was, I think, is wide open. What exactly what we need to do about security? Now, fast forward to today, 2025. Again, there's still people working on routing scalability, but I think that's much less as considered a challenge now. So among the three hard problems back then, 30 years ago, what is remaining still as a hard problem? Security.
I see a lot of nodding heads out there. So just as a reminder again, please feel free to go to the mic and ask any questions. That would be great. So at this stage, I thought we would move away from your personal experiences in the IETF and start talking a little bit about your general advice on how to be successful. And so I was curious if you had any thoughts on, what have you seen that has commonly tripped up people that come to the IETF, things that people might commonly do that generally does not end well, or what examples you've seen of how people are able to build upon success at the IETF. And putting you on the spot, Bjorn, you want to start?
Sure. Yeah, I think the number one advice I would give is talk to people. And that can be like in the hallways, in the meetings, on the mailing lists, in events like this, the social events that are organized. Sign up for those, because that's where how you get introduced to the society, and that's how you build the networks that you need, the social networks that you need to get your work recognized, and also that's how you learn like how to improve. So I think, uh, yeah, take the initiative, say hi to people more than you like, more than you think is more than you would naturally do. Like force yourself to say hi more than you would otherwise. That's a great way to get to know the people of the IETF, which is ultimately what the IETF is. So that's my advice.
Alicia?
That's a very good question because I never thought about that question of being effective. But if I have to say something, that is, you don't have to think about how you can be effective, but rather you should look for the problems that really interest you so that you really want to solve it. That's how I got started. At the very beginning, there was the congestion control, um, then the routing issues. There's a one time there's something regarding the router's state. So my former advisor, David Clark, challenged me to say, why don't you solve this problem? I said, sure, I will do it. So that's the end with RSVP, that signaling protocol that later I was very surprised that got so widely deployed. So you have to find a problem that's really interesting you, you want to solve it. Now I remember another thing. In my early days at MIT, because I didn't do much of programming per se, but David Clark hired a few really full-time programmers implementing TCP/IP. I heard them just running on the hallways, yelling to say, TCP retransmission timer really sucks. And that really caught my attention. I said, why? So I wrote my very first paper. The title is Why TCP Timers Don't Work Well. And that later led to the solution of that problem, not by me, by other people. But you have to think about what's the problem, and you really work on that. Uh, the effectiveness will come after you.
Thanks. Those were good points. A few additions that I maybe have. So one is to what Bjorn said, right? Sort of this is a participatory environment, and saying hi more than you feel comfortable is good. It's also really good if you like go to the microphone in sessions, even if you're new, right? Because there's probably a chance that you have a perspective on something that's being discussed that we otherwise wouldn't hear. Right, and just because it's maybe your first or second or third IETF doesn't mean that we don't want you to come to the microphone. Just believe me, we all know the people who've been here as long as some of us have, and they always go to the microphone, and not always do they really make a new point, right? Oftentimes they just go to the microphone and say the same thing they've said for the last 10 years. So we'd rather hear from new participants with new perspectives a bit more, and maybe a little bit less from the old people that we already know their perspectives. So please do go to the microphone. And the other thing is like the ITF takes a long time to get stuff done. That's sort of a fact. So don't feel frustrated if you don't get traction during your first meeting for an idea that you had. It might take more socializing. Sometimes the time hasn't come, right? So you're early and the community isn't there yet where you are. And so you get like blank stares because they don't see the problem that you clearly see. You know, sometimes the community catches up and then you can say, I told you 5 years ago and now we can finally do it. And sometimes the technology moves a different way. And don't like tie your personal happiness to something that happens in the IETF, right? Don't be personally offended if an idea doesn't fly or somebody doesn't like it, or and it's a little bit hard because like companies, if you're coming from a company, right, you're often sent here to like present this thing and get it through the IETF and get the RFC, right? And there's friction along the way, right? And so don't feel that you're failing you as a person, but maybe also as an employee if you can't get it through the IETF. The IETF has a filter function. That's one of the important things, right? It's not just a rubber stamping, everybody gets the RFC kind of function. It is really only the best ideas make it out. And a lot of the ideas, although they're really good for some scenarios, maybe they're terrible for others. And the IETF will try its hardest to make sure that whatever we publish is actually good for the internet overall. And so ideas, even good ideas, and even like some of our ideas are sitting up here, right, never made it through, and that's okay. So just like be realistic with what's going to happen.
Okay. I'm going to pause again to remind people, please feel free to ask your own questions, or I will continue down my quite lengthy list. Go ahead. Excellent.
So one of the common complaints I hear about the IETF is it doesn't do stuff quickly. And whereas I appreciate it's important to be thorough, what advice would you have that I'm not wasting people's time and I can sort of not slow down the IETF?
So I didn't catch the last part of your question. What suggestions would we have? Oh,
How do I stop myself from slowing the IETF down?
it's not you. I mean, the IETF, just by the way it works, right? It's clocked by having 3 meetings a year. Yes, in theory, we work year round and online, but in reality, the forcing function of a meeting happening just makes like emails sent and drafts submitted, and after the IETF, everybody's burned out and does nothing for a couple of weeks, and then it picks back up. That's just like historically, that's we have this sort of this cadence, right? And therefore things take a while before they can run through the process. And even like so quick was record fast for the IETF. Like we had the BOF in 2016, we had the RFCs in 2021. That's 5 years. That is really fast for the IETF. It's really slow in real life. But that's sort of the time scales, right? So you're not gonna, if you want to be effective, you're not gonna come here once or twice and then you're done. Right? It's usually, if you want to be effective here, it's a longer term engagement. You don't have to come to all the meetings, but it's at least you're going to be involved and see an idea through for longer.
Well, if I add on to it, don't worry that you slow people down. The working group chair will tell you. I've done that before.
I think we have another piece of advice from an experienced IETFer.
Thank you. Don't make me blush. Yes, I agree with Björn. So socialize, reach out to people. This is very welcoming community. But at the same time, it's a contribution driven. If you have an idea, put it in writing, because in my own experience, when you write it, it disciplines your thoughts. So you make yourself think more when you put in writing. Also, use mailing lists. Go to mailing lists because it's enormous wealth of expertise. So you'll find whether this idea been brought up before, and if you don't see it being published yet, then there is some good reason for that. So, but don't be afraid to speak your mind. Don't be afraid to bring your ideas. But again, put it in writing. Bring it as a contribution. Put it in draft. Because then people will notice you, people will read it, will comment, and will come to you, and something good will come out of it. So good luck.
Yeah, I think to Daniel's point as well, that you might feel like you're slowing the process down if you ask a question or like point out something that could be improved or something. But I feel like a lot of the time things are slow because the contributions aren't coming in fast enough. So if you add your contributions, that might actually help speed up the process.
Yeah. I actually, could you introduce yourself? I was supposed to ask, no, you don't need to. The gentleman that's at the mic now, because I was, proper cue discipline is that you're supposed to introduce yourself, and I have not been adequately chairing to tell people to introduce themselves at the mic.
Hello, this is Pavel for the record. I'm a PhD student at AIT. I don't really have a question per se, but I do have a lot of appreciation for Li Zhang. When I was a master's student, I did my thesis under NDN, named Data Networking. So looking at you today in person, in the flesh, in my first IETF meeting, I was sort of starstruck. So thank you so much, by the way, for developing NDN. I'm like nervous and shaking. It's like looking at a like Hollywood celebrity. Um,
So
but
not that far.
yeah.
I were you just that many years back.
But I would like to ask about the progress of NDN. If you could just say in a few words, because well, it is as you mentioned, supposed to be a future internet architecture. Maybe do you see it evolving to something we would potentially use in the future, like in the real world?
I don't think the rest of the room wants me to turn this into an Indian tutorial, but I would be more than happy to chat. But fundamentally, we have to ask the question, uh, how you want the internet to look like 20 years down the road or 40 years down the road. It's not that far away because I came 40 years back. We have to ask that question. Today, we solve short-term problems, but someone needs to look at the longer term. Uh, and we haven't got into the hot topics. I'll say something more there. But thank you very much for your interest in the.
Thank you to you.
Let's
Thank you.
chat afterwards.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Go ahead. While he's doing that, Pablo, can you remove yourself from the queue now?
Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Jnana Jaraman. My guide will be there, Lixia. In mail, we have to discuss, right? I have confusion about the meetings in the parallel session, which I have to select. I have to attend for that one for upcoming days. I have a lot of, suppose the parallel sessions will be on the same topics. I have selected for DNS and security and as well as IPv6. So it should be sometimes it should be matched at the same time, same. As a fresher, as a new participant, which will be up to for me how to suggest, please.
I just add one more thing. For people interested in where the future should go, I encourage you to join the DingRG meeting tomorrow morning, 9:30, decentralization of the internet.
So I think the gentleman at the mic asked about the topics on the agenda, right? And as you notice when you looked at the agenda, there's a lot of parallel tracks, and it can be difficult to. So it's very difficult for the secretariat to schedule a meeting that minimizes conflicts, and the ISG takes like an entire 2-hour phone call to like after the secretariat has done the hardware to like fine tune it to remove contention, but it's never possible because there's just too much going on in parallel and too many topics are interlinked. So one pretty obvious tip is that you don't need to like you can leave a session at any time and you can join a session at any time. You just leave the room, walk into the room. Like everybody does it all the time. So session hopping is possible if you notice something is early in one session that you're interested in, and then in another session in another room there's something later. Just move, right? It's not like people will look at you funny or anything. Everybody does it all the time. So session hopping helps. Sometimes it's also possible to sort of email the author or the presenter of a presentation and say, hey, sorry, I have a conflict. I can't make your presentation. Can we chat in a break or something like that? And most people are very happy if they get questions or engagement about whatever they're presenting at the IETF, right? So if you don't make a session, that's not a problem. There's obviously recordings, and then there's the chat, which can give you some of the same benefit as having been there. But if you want to talk to the people and ask questions, just do it at some other time.
Go ahead.
Hi, Barukas here from Seattle. So I think I have one question. I don't quite get the answer from these sessions, so figure I should ask you experienced experts. So I heard that there are a lot of things getting done in the mailing list, and there are something getting done in the meetings like today, or like this week, right? Can you guys give a bit more color on like what is effective to be in mailing list and what is effective to be a meeting, and how do we usually deal with these?
So in an ideal world, right, people would read the documents and read the email discussion before the meeting, and then we could use the time at the meeting to actually have sort of high bandwidth personal discussions on the hard questions, and do the things that can be done on the mail list. That's in an ideal world. Some groups are really quite close to that. Other groups, the presentations are very much like, I want to report what happened in my what changed in my draft, and they go through every little change, and then there's no questions, right? And that's, personally, I think this is a little bit of a wasted opportunity when it comes to a working group. That should have been really be done on a mailing list. But sort of the, in short, like things that require intense discussion or maybe are controversial or maybe are also new topics benefit from being presented in person, I think, and discussed in person and in the hallway. And things that are maybe a continuation of existing work or a decision that needs to be taken but isn't particularly controversial, I think is fine to do on a mailing list. And obviously all discussions in the all decisions in the IETF are sort of ratified on the mailing list after the fact. So while we do polls of the room to get like a feeling what the people in the room and online think during a session, not everybody can be in the room or online during the session. So we go to the mailing list to give people who are also participating in the group a chance to say their say.
Okay.
Aram Welling, Oxford Information Labs. Just have very basic question, since this is one of the days where we can't ask a dumb question. So Dr. Zhang mentioned something about centralization of the internet or something, some session. So I was just glancing. This is a very basic 101 question, but for example, if I look at the schedule for tomorrow, how can I tell that that is a topic? I don't see it like in the title of the sessions. What is the best way to know where you're going to be covering that? Which session do I go to? It says I have 9:30 and I'm looking at all the lists.
Yeah. So our name is DINRG, DINRG.
DINRG. DINRG.
No, tomorrow, 9:30.
Okay.
And you click on that, you can see the
Oh,
agenda.
DNRG. Oh, okay. Yeah, it's actually, interestingly enough, it's called decentralization instead of centralization.
Decentralization.
Okay. Okay. So it's that one. Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Sure.
Just as a side note, you said today was the day you can ask bad questions or dumb questions. I don't remember your exact words, but I would like to point out there's no such thing as a dumb question. All questions are welcome. The only questions that are not are the ones that aren't asked, because if you don't ask, nobody will know. So feel free to ask any question to anybody all week.
I've been asking dumb questions every single day of every single IETF week for 25 years. So don't feel bad.
All right. We've talked a lot about how to be successful, and I've struggled with exactly how to word this question, but what I was wondering was, what things do you see people do that are almost guaranteed not to be successful? Like, what problems, especially for folks that have been in leadership for a while, what problems do you see that generally do not contribute to you getting your work done in the IETF? Advice on things not to do.
I remember getting advice at my first IETF about this, and that advice was, when you bring work to the IETF, it should be work. It should not be like a finished solution that you just want a rubber stamp on. Because if you're not willing to change the work based on the input from the working group, then why are you here, kind of? So I don't know if everyone agrees about that advice, but I felt that that was good advice, and it kind of makes sense to me. It also means that you can bring sort of, or you, the work that you bring here should be not done yet. It should be, there should be open questions. There should be room for improvement and room for feedback, which also lowers the bar for bringing work here in a sense. All right. So I think that's a bit liberating. But also I think it's an important point not to sort of do everything, make everything ready, and then come to the IETF, because then there is no feedback. So yeah.
So you need to be prepared to be open to input.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it doesn't mean come unprepared,
Right.
but it means, yes, come open to input and sort of welcome the feedback process.
All right. Do either of you,
No, I think that's exactly right. That was the first thing that came to my mind as well. That sort of, if you know, if you're not open to change, this is not quite the group for you, or the forum for you. Um, and as I mentioned earlier, don't feel bad if people don't get it, right? Or you feel like you're, so some ideas just need to be explained several times. And I know that we had a gentleman called Bob Briscoe who came from BT, and he had a very clever idea for working on something similar to what Lisha mentioned earlier, RSVP, resources in the internet, right? And Bob was brilliant, but he was not able to explain this idea very well. But we all felt there's something there. We just need to like get it out of him, and it took years, but we did, right? So some ideas. I mean, the work we do is complicated. The internet's more and more complicated, and so um, it requires time for the community to understand a new proposal. And so sometimes you get like reactions from people who haven't maybe fully understood what you're presenting, and so you know, you need to deal with it. um but yeah, the other, like, corollary to what you mentioned, right? Don't bring research necessarily, because if there's too many open questions, or whether if we have no idea whether something will work or not, the IETF probably isn't the right place, because it's supposed to be an engineering organization where sort of the research is done. What needs to happen is engineering to get it deployed. If research isn't done yet, we have a place for that. It's called the IRTF, which is the Research Task Force, right? So there's research groups. Lisha mentioned the DINRG, but that's where research problems go, and those, or some of those research problems might get answers, and that make them ready for engineering, and then the IETF can take over. So based on what your idea is, think about where it would fit best in terms of the options we have for taking new input.
you want a question? Oh, and Andrew, are you in the room? Okay.
Okay, thank you. Aram Welling again, sorry, Oxford Information Labs. So as a follow-on to that, just hearing the discussions today, that's kind of been the blurry point for me, is I'm trying to understand this concept of a standard versus research. So I heard earlier from one of the presenters that something about if you've implemented it uh, twice, there was like this number thrown out about twice, that somehow that enters the world of engineering as a, from the IETF side, as opposed to if you haven't implemented it, then it's the, but then I hear the words like ideas being used, right? So when you think of the word idea, you think of something that's not been implemented. So where is it, is it really blurred, or is it really that, uh, are the demarcations that succinct between the two sides? Thank you.
It is a bit blurry. So some IETF working groups, especially I think in the routing area, have given themselves sort of this bar that they will only consider proposals for standardization where at least two different independent implementations exist. But that's a bar that a particular working group has given itself. But in general, so one of the ways in which we sort of when new ideas get presented, and we try to figure out, like, is this more of a research activity, or is this actually ready for standardization? One of the things we look at is there an implementation, like this Roth consensus on running code, right? The Dave Clark. So if and it doesn't mean that just because there's running code, having running code doesn't mean it's ready for engineering. It might still be research with running code, but that's already better than research with no running code. But so the running code is one of the aspects that it exists, and specifically if multiple people have implemented it and informations can talk to each other, that's sort of a general signal that, hey, maybe this is baked enough that, it's ready for engineering.
Andrew?
Hello, Andrew McCormick. You mentioned the increasing complexity of the internet. We've talked about how things move slowly and some of the reasons they move slowly. One of the things that has stricken me as I've joined a working group recently is the amount of overlap between the different RFCs. You've got 20 different OAuth RFCs that affect the Jose RFCs, that affect Whimsy, that affect like these kind of intermingling web. And I'm just curious if you have any advice on how to navigate that when you've got an idea that like might fit into some of these, might fit into none of these, but might add another dependency, and kind of those layers of complexity that come from that.
So true. As a newcomer or as a new participant, this can be sort of difficult, but it also kind of isn't your job, right? This is what the working group chairs can help with. This is what other authors of some of those RFCs can help with. Like if new idea gets presented and somebody brings up some other RFC that already exists, right? It's not on you to figure out necessarily what's the difference. You can go to the person or to the chair after the session and say, hey, somebody mentioned this RFC. I don't know what this is. Can you explain to me, like, what should I look at this? Should I like actually go like research this and figure out, or can I disregard this? But this is more like a community effort to figure out like how does a new piece of work that we're doing fits in with everything else. And it's sort of a best effort activity. We're never going to be able to fully eliminate conflicts between the RFCs, and I don't think we need to really. As long as the deployed base on the internet interoperates, we're fine.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. One of the things we've talked a fair bit about all day is how important it is to build your network here and to talk to people. And your advice is just to go up and say hello. I was wondering if you had any other suggestions for building your network besides talking to people. And the one thing that I was thinking about is, collaboration is really key to getting stuff done in the IETF. So, what other activities or what other suggestions do you have for sort of building that collaborative environment you need?
You have to find a way to sort of keep the work up and the collaborations up outside the meetings, right? And that's where the relationships that you make here help, right? Because you don't just do like 3 weeks of work every year. It's all the time in between where something else needs to happen. Sometimes it can, like, for those of us who are a little bit on the academic side, right? Sometimes it means that there's a joint proposal to the EU or some other funding agency that a bunch of people who are involved in IETF work, they also do like a related funding proposal, and maybe that gets funded and that gets them the money to work on things, at other times. Sometimes it means like if a company is really interested in something, maybe there's a way to collaborate with them. But it really, I think it starts with the social networking here at the IETF, right? So if you are interested in a piece of technology, like check if the people who are on the RFC or chairing the working group, if they're here, right? There's a participants list for everybody who's here or online, so you can check if you're here, if they're also here. Send them an email and say, hey, can we chat at the reception for 5 minutes or something like that. And tag along for lunches and dinners. If you're standing with people that are like at lunch break and they're like, hey, ask them if you can come along, right? This is really sort of how relationships get built, and how you also learn about somebody who's new here that you otherwise might not have met.
Yeah, and the secretariat arranges a lot of social things, so sign up for those things and show up, and then that's a great way to meet people as well.
Excellent. So moving on to hot topics. I was wondering what each of you is excited about for this coming week at the IETF.
Well, excited is such a loaded word.
What are you anticipating?
I guess, I mean, I'm closest to the work that I'm contributing to myself. So for me, that's the IPPM group and the MapRG. I'm talking at both of those about the quality outcome internet draft that I'm one of the authors of. So that's one of the things I'm excited about this week.
Well, we'll save the best to the last for Lars. So I think, yeah, excited is a loaded word. For me, actually, I feel really obligated. As I've been watching IETF for so many years, I think I feel personal view, at least I can see the picture somehow in a different view than many people, I guess. I mentioned before that security is a fundamental challenge. Now, doing research, we have to ask the question, why? When we manage to deal with congestion control, with new transport, quick, Lars mentioned, and we handle the routing pretty well, how come congestion is still kind of not congestion? I mean, the security is still somehow it's elusive, right? We don't really have a comprehensive and effective solutions. We have lots of solutions. The thing, if I say something, take me half seriously. Um, we are applying patches. We have a problem, we patch onto it. I recently listened to a recorded farewell talk by Steve Bolovan. I think for some number of years, Steve Bolovan was the security area director for IETF. He just retired from Columbia and gave an excellent talk. One thing I remember very clearly, he said that today's security approaches take this reactive approach. We find the problem and we fix it. And this will never put us in this to have the upper hand. We keep fixing the problems. So how can we change this negative kind of passive position to a more proactive position? Right, that's the thing I'm currently thinking about. I think that security is the biggest problem. What security depend on? Identity. You have to first know who is who, then you figure out who can do what. That's fundamentally the security problems we have to solve. And where are the identities today? The internet started with addresses because back then we knew that computers need to talk to each other. So we give them addresses. Why we give them addresses? Because we saw that in telecom, the telephone network before internet, they had the phone numbers. We changed that to addresses. But at the time, I tell you, there was no application essentially. Therefore, we thought, let's get the computers talk to each other first by shooting packets to each other. And with that, I think that's exactly the right approach at the time, so that computers can talk to each other, then the successful applications come built on top of that basic communication. But today, we still follow that way building network. If I make an inappropriate analogy, your parents bought you a nice sweater when you were 3 years old. Now you're 30. You still wear the same thing. At best, it doesn't fit anymore, right? So internet fundamentally has changed. Today, compared to 40 years back when the TCP/IP were putting together. I'll just stop there. So for me, hot topic, naming, security, the two go together.
But like Björn, I have a dance card of sessions just because of the work I'm doing that I'm going to go to like Quick and TLS and so on. And I'm guessing everybody has those anyway. Otherwise, BOFs are always good. I try to, like, if I don't have anything else to go to, I try to like see if there's a BOF in a given slot, because those are self-contained presentations for potential new work. So you don't actually have to have a lot of context. You can ideally you understand what the BOF is about based on the presentations in the BOF. It's not always a given, but that's at least the idea. Similarly, the IRTF research groups have talks that are more like academic paper talks in the sense that they're also self-contained and the presenters sort of don't assume you followed the work for the last 10 years. So those are typically also very, very good to attend. And sometimes we have these area-wide meetings like SAC for the security area, or what else is there, apps area or something. They have often presentations for some broader topics that are also often new work. So in general, sort of, as a new participant, it's actually easier to understand the new work than it is like to go to like some BGP working group that has existed for like 30 years and try to understand which bits they're trying to diddle right now. Unless you're a BGP person, in which case, you know, you should definitely go. But for a new participant, you want to get a feel for certain things, like those types of sessions I think are good. And if you sit in a session and it's not working for you, like don't stay, right? Just like go somewhere else, right? Your time here is too useful to be wasted in a session that's boring.
All right, so I don't see anybody in the queue. Do you all have, we've got about 3 minutes left, so do you have like 30 seconds wrap up, or you said everything you want to say?
I'm done.
All right, so with that, can we thank our panelists? And this concludes this session. I think,
No,
sorry.
right, I thought that was another set of slides and I was moving, so. Okay. I mean, but we need to let them go.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, and we're actually not going to go on to the slides that we had prepared to finish this last session, because we're going to let you have a little bit longer break until the quick connection session that's starting at 4 o'clock. So we're going to give you a little bit more time. There are a bunch of events that happen throughout the week that are for new participants, and a bunch of things that just happen for all the participants of IETF. You will be getting messages daily. I'll send them every morning of what's happening during the day, just highlighting some of the events that would be good for you to go to. As far as picking individual working groups, that's going to be up to you. Yeah, of course, during the week, if you guys have any questions, please reach out. Let us know. I was going to say Bjorn skedaddled a little early. Bjorn was a recent participant, a new participant, you know, some years ago. So it's still fresh in his mind what worked in getting acquainted with getting integrated into the IETF. So if you see him in the hall, ask him, hey, how did you do it? This is a lot of information. I don't know what to do next. But yeah, so I will be sending you a bunch of emails. And now I'm going to turn it over to Jay, who's going to do our final little wrap up before you get a break. Thank you.
Thank you. So for those of you who were not here this morning, I'm Jay Daly. I'm the IETF Executive Director. Thank you all very much for coming to this day, to our first whole day long new participant program. We rely on your feedback to decide which presenters to not invite back. So please fill out the surveys after each session. You will have the emails. It takes 30 seconds. Please go back and fill out. So far, I've had 36 responses throughout the day to 7 sessions, which is awful because there has been 50 people in the room each time. So I really should be looking at 350 responses, really. So please go and fill those surveys out. Otherwise, if you have any other feedback, please give them to me and Michelle. If there's anything we can help you with, please email us and let us know. And once again, thank you so much for coming. Been very appreciated. Thank you.
and go to Quick Connections. You get to walk around, meet experienced IETFers, working group chairs, IETF leadership. There are going to be some drinks and snacks. You can relax, talk about your day. So we'll see you up there. I'm going to pronounce it wrong. The Pagoda? Yeah. Fourth floor. Check my computer.